Let's talk plumbing. The first time I replaced a faucet cartridge, it took me over 3 hours, multiple trips to the hardware store, and some fabrication. The second time it took 5 minutes, including the time to remove the stuff under the sink. Before getting into it, I'm Mulhern, I'm a DIYer, I'm not a plumber, a carpenter, an electrician, or a mechanic, but that rarely stops me from getting a job done. Today we're going to talk about how to fix, and more importantly, how not to fix, a drippy faucet with an old cartridge. On my first attempt, I'd never replaced a cartridge before, and frankly, I had no idea what the hell one even was. If you're in that boat, this may be the video for you. Let's get into it. So first off, what the hell is a cartridge? If you have a bathroom faucet with two handles, one hot and one cold, it's likely that inside each of those handles is a disposable and easily replaceable valve called a cartridge. That's right, when they start leaking, you don't have to replace the whole faucet. Who knew, right? My understanding is that there are actually some different styles of these things. Some of them pull out and some of them screw out. In my case, my faucets are a brand called Grohe or Grohe. It's spelled Grohe, which uses a ceramic cartridge that just screws in and out. So let's take a minute to discuss the anatomy of a faucet, or at least my faucet. This schematic represents your typical two-handled bathroom faucet. On the left side, we've got the hot water. The water comes in from the bottom into this thing called a valve body, where it travels through a separate tube to what's called a center body, where it mixes with cold water and then comes up and out the spout. The actual valve is inside the cartridge. The cartridge fits down into that valve body and is covered by the handle that you see on top of the sink. If you didn't know that there was a cartridge inside of there, chances are you'd never stumble upon it. So this is a great place to start my how not to. The first time I did this, I had no idea how the handles on my faucet came apart. I studied them for quite a while. Let me show you what they look like. So here's a picture of my actual faucet, and then if we zoom in on one side, here's the hot side. I had no idea how the heck this thing came apart. I wasn't even sure if it did come apart. That center domed cap, I just assumed that it probably pried out. Well, that was wrong, which I eventually figured out after bubba-ing it up really bad with a chisel, a flat blade screwdriver, and a hammer. Fortunately, the damage wasn't too bad. To my surprise, the tops, which I couldn't even really tell were a separate piece of metal, simply screwed off. By hand. No tools required. Let me show you. Okay, so now what? Well, I mentioned before that I had never done this before, but I'm pretty handy. I started trying to unscrew the cartridge with a wrench and quickly found that all I could do was partially rotate the entire valve body assembly, both the parts above and below the sink. So I approached this the way a mechanic might. I'll just disassemble everything and then put it all back together. That decision was a huge time waster. In order to do that, I had to remove two nuts holding the handle assembly to the sink. I also had to remove the hose connecting the valve body to the center body. After several years, the cartridge had semi-welded itself to the valve body, and so I had to use a hammer and a pair of wrenches to beat the cartridge free. I was pretty happy with myself at that point, and then I went to reassemble and noticed that one of the tubes used a little fiber washer that would surely also need to be replaced to prevent leaking. And of course, my hardware store doesn't carry that washer. So faced with ordering a massively overpriced washer online and paying shipping, I chose to just fabricate one. I literally bought a pack of washers with a similar outer diameter and drilled a hole in the center, just a little bit bigger. So yes, I fabricated plumbing parts. Reassembly was also a massive pain in the ass because the nuts I moved were also for adjusting the height of the handle on the sink. Too tight and it rubbed, too loose and there was a notable gap below it. So yeah, this was not the way to do it. I spent an absurd amount of time on it. Fast forward a few years and I needed to do it again on the other three handles in my bathroom. We have two sinks. And with those years to reflect on the folly of my ways, I hatched a better plan. Now we get to the fun part. To do this, you will need, first off, a Phillips head screwdriver to remove the handle from the cartridge. You'll need an impact driver. Yes, the same one you use to drive deck screws, and this is the key. You'll also need a socket adapter and an appropriately sized deep well socket that'll fit on the head of your cartridge. Mine was 17 millimeters. You'll need an appropriate sized wrench for tightening the new cartridge into place. I just used a combination wrench. You could also use a ratchet with a socket if you wanted. You're going to need something to hold the valve body underneath the sink. I used an adjustable wrench. Vice grips or channel locks would also work really well. And then, of course, you're going to need a new cartridge. So to replace this cartridge, you're going to do the following. First up, you're going to make sure you have the right cartridge. If you ordered a pair, figure out which one goes on the right and which one goes on the left. And just a word of warning, the hot and cold sides rotate in different directions, so they are not the same. And the markings on them may not mean anything. For me, the one on the left was labeled with an R and the one on the right was labeled with an L. Some other replacements I bought had no markings at all, but they did have a red or a blue dot to indicate hot or cold, and that was really helpful. But if you don't have any markings and you have no idea, you can try twisting the stem of the cartridge and observing whether the valve itself is opening or closing, and then match that to the corresponding handle based on the direction. So once you know you have the right cartridge for the side you're working on, remove your handle cap and the handle, and then assemble your tools. This should be really easy, but there's no sense in doing anything else if you can't get that far. So then at this point, shut off the water into the sink. That's probably obvious, but if you don't do that, as soon as you pull that cartridge out, you're going to have a fountain. The next thing you're going to do is you're going to use your adjustable wrench or vice grips or channel locks to hold the valve body under the sink. You need to get a good grip on it. And you may need to hold that wrench at an angle to get past some hoses or obstructions, but that's okay. The goal is just to keep it from rotating. Depending on the size of your sink, you may be able to do this yourself, or you may really want to have a helper do it, because you're going to turn around and use your other hand on the top to unscrew this thing. So a quick tip, this is easier with a helper. I did it myself though. Okay, so while holding the valve body under the sink, you're going to use an impact driver. Yes, really, an impact driver, to unscrew the cartridge. It'll help break it free. So you probably only need to bump the trigger once or twice to break it loose. After that, you're going to be able to unscrew it by hand. Do not hold the trigger down like you're removing a stubborn lug nut. If the valve body breaks free from the wrench you're holding it with underneath the sink, you're going to damage something. So at this point, while you're still holding the valve under the sink, you should be able to manually screw the new cartridge in and then just snug it tight with your other wrench. And this thing does not have to be He-Man tight. There's a rubber ring at the bottom of the cartridge, so just make it snug. And at that point, congratulations, you're done. Repeat on the other side if desired. When I did this the second time, I actually spent more time trying to find the right size wrench and cleaning the crap out from under the sink than I did removing and then replacing the cartridge. So I guess that's when you know you finally did it right, when that's all the time that it took. So who would have thought that an impact driver would be the solution to a plumbing project, but it really was. Anyway, if you like this video, please give it a like and let me know that it didn't just disappear into the ether. And if you have any questions or tips on cartridge replacement or another unconventional plumbing tip, please leave a comment. Take care, everybody.